Have you ever said no and then felt like you immediately needed to take it back? Like maybe your chest tightened and your mind started racing. And suddenly you're explaining, over explaining, softening, or even just completely abandoning the boundary that you just set. Not because you didn't mean the boundary, but because something in your body felt off, maybe. Maybe it even felt a little bit unsafe. And what's confusing about this is logically, the boundary makes sense, right? You know that it's healthy. It's what you want to be doing as a parent, as a woman, as someone trying to break patterns. But your body doesn't respond with certainty in those moments. It responds maybe with guilt, with anxiety, with this deep, almost immediate urge to fix it, to maybe smooth it over, to make sure everyone else is okay. And if you've ever had that moment where you thought, why is this so hard for me? Why can other people set boundaries so easily, but I feel like I'm doing something wrong? I really want you to hear this clearly. This is honestly, it's not a personality flaw. It's not a lack of confidence. It's none of those things. It's not you being bad at setting boundaries. What it is your body remembering. Because for a lot of us, boundaries didn't feel safe growing up. We maybe had to bend over backwards for other people. Saying no wasn't just expressing a need, it meant risking disconnection. Even now in adulthood, it meant tension, withdrawal. It maybe even meant punishment, sometimes emotional, sometimes relational. So your nervous system had to adapt. It learned to keep the peace, or maybe don't rock the boat. It learned to make sure that everybody else can be okay, so that you can be okay. And now, even though your life looks different, and even though you are safe, your body is still running on these old patterns. So when you go to set a boundary today, that having a boundary could cost you a connection. And that's why it feels so big. And that's why saying something as simple as no can feel like everything is on the line. So in this episode today, we're going to unpack what actually happens inside your body when you set a boundary and maybe why it feels so hard for you. We're going to talk about why guilt shows up so quickly and strongly in these moments and why it feels like a threat instead of a choice that you're making. And we're also going to discuss how you can hold boundaries more safely without abandoning yourself in the process. Because you're not just learning to say no, you're teaching your body that it's finally safe too. So let's dive in to this week's episode. Your body often responds to boundaries based on past consequences, not on current or present reality. So this is often true for cycle breakers. And if you're a cycle breaker, I would love to hear your story about this. However, for me, when I started turning into breaking cycles and things like this, I had a lot of guilt and shame come up about setting boundaries and setting cycles. Setting boundaries and having those conversations of saying no to things and changing the way things have always been done. I always was concerned about, oh, what was my relationship going to look like with this person or that person? Or if I say this on social media, what kind of backlash am I going to get? Am I going to still be received in the family? Am I still going to be received safely among friends and acquaintances? These were constantly things coming up in my mind. But what I've since learned is that the pattern was an invisible pattern that I was taught growing up. My nervous system felt safe when everybody else around me felt safe, so I had to adapt to that. I wasn't allowed to say no, and maybe you weren't allowed to say no either, for risk of punishment. Maybe there was a lot of emotional withdrawal. I see that even present day sometimes. Maybe there was rejection. Maybe there was guilt put on you. Like maybe there was an episode I did about the good daughter role, and as a good daughter, we're supposed to adapt. As a good daughter, we were taught that, hey, we need to put everyone else above us and ahead of us. And that setting boundaries wasn't safe to do. In fact, it was often looked down, correct? So that guilt and that rejection and maybe that emotional draw all plays into this. It's an invisible pattern that we were taught growing up. And that's what our nervous system adapted to. now as adults, even in the moments where we're like, I know I'm breaking the cycle. I know I'm safe in doing this. Why does this feeling keep coming up? Now, maybe every time you try to hold a boundary, your body doesn't ask, is this safe? It just automatically assumes that it's not safe to do. And with that no and with that boundary, that's where all these other emotional feelings come up. I often wonder, why does the sentence no or firm boundary setting feel like danger? And in this section of the podcast, we're going to talk about the nervous system breakdown and why it feels like danger to say no. So first of all, let's explain what's happening internally. When we set a boundary, our nervous system is saying this is a perceived threat. Automatically, we go into a fight, flight, or freeze mode, or we maybe go into our shutdown response, or maybe our nervous system is not understanding that we are safe in that moment. To tie this to physiology, like I just said, we go to fight, flight, or freeze mode. So fight is maybe where you get defensive and start snapping. Freeze is where you start shutting down and silence. Flight would be avoidance or people pleasing, which comes up quite often. With that perceived threat, we go into one of these three modes, and that boundary then isn't being able to be firmly set. We have the amygdala in our brain, and the amygdala doesn't track time. So although you're right now, you know that you're safe in being a conscious parent, and right now you're being safe in setting a boundary and setting and changing cycles and breaking patterns, your amygdala doesn't know the difference between now and maybe 25 years ago. It tracks patterns. So what happened 25 years ago could still come up due to your amygdala. It reacts to familiar emotional experiences. So if you tried to say no when you were like 15 and now 20 years later you're 35 and you're trying to say no to the same person, that will track in your amygdala and it will track to that familiar emotional experience. If you didn't feel safe when you were saying no at 15, you're not going to feel safe saying no at 35. It's not logical reality. It's just based on familiar emotional experiences. I feel like this is why it's so important, especially as cycle breaking mothers and conscious parents, that we teach our children today that it's okay to say no and we respect their no's and we allow them to set boundaries. I do this with my children quite often. It's very hard. It's very hard as a cycle breaking mother to come in and say, I respect your boundary when your boundaries weren't respected at that same age. So for instance, let's say my 5-year-old, my kids in general, okay, they don't want me to kiss them goodbye anymore at school, which was hard for me. I had to respect that they did not want that. And in that respect, they're learning that it's okay and it's safe for me to set boundaries with my mom, right? But I respect that. Maybe we find a different way. Actually, my kids and I now do handshakes instead. We made a cool handshake and we say goodbye that way. I still get that connection with them. Maybe it's not the way that I envisioned, but I still get the connection. And also, they're learning that it's okay to say no. And that it's respected when it's said no. There's no pushback. There's no threat. There's no withdraw from their parent. They're saying, yeah, I can say no, and I feel safe in saying no. And in turn, I've seen this show up time and time again when they don't want to do something or if they don't feel comfortable with doing something, they feel safe in expressing themselves. So your body isn't reacting to your child or your partner in this moment. What they're reacting to is what the past moment represents. So when those feelings of fight, flight, or freeze come up and you're trying to set a boundary, or those feelings of threat come up, is because your body isn't reacting to the current moment, it's reacting to what it remembered in that emotional experience in past time. Okay, we'll introduce a new concept to you called implicit memory. This is where memories are stored in the body. Somewhere in the body, it's not a conscious thought. So if we're reading books like The Body Keeps Score, for example, this is where something like this would come up. Emotions and memory are stored in the body, not in our conscious thought. So this is where saying no could equal instant guilt, or where you set a limit, and this could equal the urge to explain or over justify why you're setting that limit. We don't need to do that. We know it's safe not to do that, but we still feel like we have to. Or maybe you're trying to hold a boundary, very firm boundary, you automatically feel your anxiety spike because you're concerned for that withdrawal or that emotional backlash or whatever it may be. Okay. This is not weakness in this moment. This is memory, and it's stored in our body, implicit memory, stored in our body, not our conscious thoughts. The brain encodes the emotional experiences through implicit memory. So the boundary setting can activate those neural pathways that were previously designed with past projection. As we're growing as conscious parents and as we continuously work on this and strengthen our nervous system and strengthen our new neural pathways, these old neural pathways will be overwritten. And in overwriting those neural pathways, then we can start feeling safe and setting boundaries. But this is more of just letting you know that it's okay to have big feelings, or it's okay to feel those feelings come up and wonder, where is this coming from? Because I've changed and I've healed, but this feeling of guilt and shame is still coming up when I'm trying to set a boundary. And it's literally because your neural pathway is stronger from the past than it is of current. And it just takes time over time to continuously rewrite those neural pathways. Your nervous system really doesn't know the difference between then and now. There's no concept of time. It only knows what feels familiar to it. So the more that you embrace a new neural pathway, that's going to become more and more familiar to it. The more that we embrace those old neural pathways and having those fight or freeze mode and having that guilt come up and having that shame come up, it's going to keep embracing that old neural pathway. The nervous system really doesn't know the difference until we purposely change that experience for it. And that essentially is the concept of implicit memory. So our body is going to store that, our nervous system stores that, and then we can have the conscious thought knowing, hey, yeah, we're making change, but those feelings aren't stored in that area. It's stored in our body. And that's what comes up first. Along the same lines, there's a big difference between what guilt is and what threat is. They can feel very similar, but there's a very fine line between what it is to feel guilty and have threat. So guilt is something that is when you violate your values. Threat response can be misinterpreted as guilt, but what it is like when you have those body feelings. The chest is tight. Maybe your thoughts start to race. You want the urge to fix. You want to take it back. Whatever you said, you're like, oh, I wish I could just take that back. So a lot of what we call guilt is actually our body trying to keep us safe. And that's the threat response. Our body feels threatened, but we actually want to feel safe. And this is where we can really shift from, I feel bad, I shouldn't have said that, to my body felt unsafe. But the boundary I set is still very much valid. It's a muscle to set boundaries and understand what boundaries are. A boundary, what I've learned along the ways, is not saying don't do that to somebody, because then you're saying then they're the ones who have to hold that boundary. A boundary is something that you hold on to. So the response is, I'm not going to let you do that to me, and I'm going to hold on to that boundary. So I'm going to make sure that boundary is firm. But if I say don't do, that's putting the boundary on somebody else. Okay, so for instance, say your child is hitting. Okay, stop hitting is not a boundary. I'm not going to let you hit your brother like that is me holding on to the boundary and then me being firm on that boundary. That's just a side note of something I've learned that I really want to share because it gets convoluted a little bit. But the same thing here, right? If you're setting a boundary, even if it's not with a child, maybe it's with a spouse or maybe it's with a parent or something like that. And okay, I don't want you to come over on Saturday. I'd prefer if you come over on Sunday. Oh, no, I'm going to come over on Saturday. It doesn't matter. No, I've said that I'm not going to let you come over on Saturday. That's the boundary, right? Your body might be like shaking inside. Oh my gosh, I should have just let them come over on Saturday. It's just so much easier. I feel so bad now. I feel all this guilt. I feel this threat coming up. My body doesn't feel safe in that. I should have just done that. It's so much easier, right? Like all these thoughts start coming. But that's the difference. Did you violate your values in that moment, or do you feel that threat response? Do you feel like the anxiety, the racing thoughts, the I don't need to come over on Saturday because blah, 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 Sunday is better? No, you should just be able to say, Saturday doesn't work. You can come over on Sunday, and it should be respected, and that's the boundary, right? A shift in our language can really allow our bodies to feel safe in setting that boundary, and the more you set boundaries, the more safe you'll feel. This is really where the cycle breaking can start to happen, okay? Parenting is hard, but parenting while holding the discomfort of others is even harder. And this truly is where that cycle breaking happens. So your child may, let's go back to the child when we're setting our boundaries with our children, whatever it may be. They may push back. They may cry. They may resist the boundary. First of all, it's their job to do that. It's their job to feel the emotions. It's their job to express themselves. That's their job. It's their job to do that. It's their job to show up that way. But their reaction is not danger. What it is development. And as soon as we can understand it's them developing their emotional IQ and their understanding of their own nervous systems and their understanding of how safe they are in those moments, that's where everything changes. That's where everything changes. So we learned, maybe you learned, that boundaries growing up is equal to disconnection. That's what I learned, right? I set a boundary. Oh, I'm not talking to you anymore until you come back to what I wanted to do, right? I saw this with myself growing up. I look back and reflect on my husband's relationship with his family, same thing. A lot of people that I speak to, same thing. As soon as they would set a boundary, they would feel disconnected. It was a shutdown response. And whatever that may be, whatever the reason for that, we're not going to dive into that today, but a boundary would often equal disconnection. So instead, this is where we cycle break, and this is where we teach that boundaries are safe and consistent. It's okay to set boundaries. It is safe to set boundaries, and there is consistency in those boundaries. This is the huge part of cycle breaking. We're no longer disconnecting because of a boundary. We're letting them know, our children know, that they are safe in doing that and that it's respected because they are people. First and foremost, they are people and they deserve to be heard and they deserve to be seen. And that's what we're doing as conscious parents, is we're allowing our children to be seen and feel safe and making their own decisions at every single age. When you set boundaries, you're not just setting a boundary. What you're doing is truly rewriting what boundaries mean. You're truly rewriting what boundaries mean in a relationship. And that is just so amazing to me. That's so amazing to me. I love this stuff because it's so empowering as a mother to be able to teach what a boundary truly is and really show them how a relationship can be. And what it's safe, what it means to be safe in that relationship. This is the legacy work. We're modeling, as parents, we're modeling safe boundary setting. So it's not the boundary. The kids, what they actually learn, what our children actually learn, is that it's not about the boundary itself. It's about the energy that's held within that boundary. So if there's calm feelings and firmness in that, it can equate to safety. But if there's reactiveness and guilt in that boundary, that would often lead to confusion. But what we're doing is that we're showing the energy of the boundary. It's held within the energy. It's not about the boundary itself. And this is not going to be perfect. We talked about this. I talk about this a lot, is that we're not here to be perfect parents. We're not here to be perfect. You're going to feel discomfort in setting that boundary or even accepting a boundary that's been shared with you. But it doesn't mean that you're doing it wrong. What it means is that your child doesn't need that perfect boundary. What they need is a safe one. And that we as their parents are their safe place to be able to express themselves. I want to do a quick little micro integration, the practical application, if you will. So this is a repeatable practice that we can do to help rewrite our neural pathways in that amygdala so that we can show up in the boundary setting with less guilt and then more of that safety feeling, okay? So first of all, like I shared, set the boundary. I'm not going to let you hit. We talked about this a little bit previously. I'm not going to let you hit. Okay? Observe in your body what's going on. If you're neutral, fantastic. It means that your neural pathway is already changing. But if you start to feel tightness, or if you start to feel the urge to pull back on that boundary, or maybe an emotional pull, say it anyway, okay? Stay in that moment. Stay there and understand. You can say to yourself, this feels uncomfortable, but I'm still safe in saying this. I'm still safe in setting this boundary. Hold the boundary. At all costs, hold the boundary and witness the reaction without abandoning yourself in the process. That's it. 3 steps. Set the boundary, observe your body, and then stay anyway. And this is how we can recreate neural pathways so that we can feel safer and safer setting those boundaries. So to tie this all together, we're not bad at setting boundaries. Our body just remembers that setting boundaries wasn't safe. But safety can always be relearned. It's what we're doing every single time you listen to this podcast. Maybe this is what we're doing every single time we show up and setting that boundary. Safety can always be relearned. One boundary at a time. Set one boundary today. A couple of days from now, do another one. And then do another one. And every time we set that boundary, we're really showing our nervous system safety. Every time that you hold that boundary through that discomfort that you feel, you're not just changing your parenting in those moments, you're changing your lineage, you're breaking the cycles, and you're changing patterns. And that's the true conscious parenting work that we talk about. If this episode resonated with you, I'd love for you to share it with a mom who's looking to break cycles, not just to manage behavior. If you need help with regulating your nervous system, I've designed a 90-second nervous system reset specifically for moms who want to reset their nervous systems within 90 seconds because we're busy. We don't have a lot of time, but I'm sure you can find 90 seconds to reset your nervous system and allow yourself to have more capacity in your day. These 4 tools can be used at any point of your day to just allow yourself to have some space in your nervous system to be reset. All it takes is 90 seconds, and I will have that for you in the show notes. It's absolutely free. It's for you as moms to be able to take that breather when you need it, okay? And reset your nervous system so that we can really show up and break those cycles and break those patterns. Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode of the Legacy Shift podcast, and I will see you in next week's episode.